The moment he stepped forward, there was no impact, no sound, no transition. Just a shift. Not in space, but in understanding. For a brief second, everything was still bright, open, endless. Freedom. That's what he thought it was. But then, the light began to break. Not fade. Not disappear. Break. Like glass under invisible pressure. Thin cracks stretched across the space around him, spreading slowly at first, then multiplying. The perfect, infinite openness began to fragment into layers, like reality itself was peeling apart. He turned, and what he saw made his chest tighten. Worlds. Not one. Not two. Hundreds. Maybe thousands. Floating. Drifting. Colliding. Some looked familiar. Cities, mountains, oceans, like real Earth. Others were distorted. Buildings bending unnaturally. Skies frozen mid-motion. People stuck in repeated actions like broken loops. And some were already collapsing. Entire realities folding inward, shrinking into nothing, like they were being erased. This isn't freedom, he whispered. His voice didn't echo. It didn't travel. It just existed. And then faded. He took a step forward. But there was no ground. Still, he moved. Like movement itself didn't need space anymore. As he passed one drifting fragment, he saw something inside it. A man. Sitting at a desk. Typing. The same position. The same movement. Again. And again. And again. A loop. But broken. The timing was off. The motion slightly delayed. Like the system that once controlled it was gone. He reached toward it. And the moment his hand came close, the fragment glitched violently. The man inside froze. Then snapped his head toward him. Direct eye contact. You're not supposed to be here. The voice didn't come from the man. It came from the fragment itself. And then it collapsed. Gone. No explosion. No sound. Just erased. He pulled his hand back slowly. His breathing, if it could still be called that, became heavier. Okay, he muttered. Okay, think. But thinking didn't help. Because nothing here followed logic anymore. He turned again. And that's when he saw something different. Not a fragment. Not a collapsing world. A figure. Standing still. Watching him. Human shape. But not fully human. The closer he moved, the clearer it became. A face. Chinese. Just like his. But older. Sharper. More controlled. Same eyes. Same structure. Different presence. You made it out, the figure said calmly. No glitch. No distortion. Perfect clarity. Out of what? He asked. The figure tilted its head slightly. The system. Silence stretched between them. Heavy. Uncomfortable. He studied the figure carefully. You're like me. The figure smiled faintly. No. A pause. Then. I'm what happens when you stay here too long. That sentence hit harder than anything before. What is this place? He asked. The figure didn't answer immediately. Instead, it looked around. at the floating worlds, at the collapsing fragments, at the endless instability, and then said, "This is what's left after control ends." His mind raced. That doesn't make sense. If the system is gone, shouldn't this be better? The figure stepped closer. Slow. Calm. Measured. That's what we all thought. All? Another pause. And then, the figure turned slightly and pointed into the distance. At first, he saw nothing. Just more fragments. More broken realities. But then, movement. Shapes. Multiple figures. Watching. Waiting. Just like the one in front of him. "You're not the first," the figure said quietly. "And you won't be the last." A cold realization began to form. Not fully. Not yet. But enough to make him feel it. That subtle shift. From hope on to something else. Something heavier. Something darker. "This isn't freedom," he said slowly. The figure looked directly into his eyes. For the first time, no calm. No control. Just truth. "No," it said. "This is where freedom ends." The words didn't settle. They stuck. This is where freedom ends. For a moment, everything around him felt heavier, like even the broken space itself had weight now. He turned slowly, looking again at the drifting worlds, the collapsing fragments, the distant figures. "You said I'm not the first," he began carefully. The older version of him nodded once. "Then where are they?" A long silence followed. Not empty, tense. Like something was deciding whether to answer. "They're here," the figure finally said. His eyes narrowed. "Those things, watching? They're not things." The response was immediate. Sharp. "They're what you become when you stay." A chill ran through him. He looked again, more carefully this time. The distant figures weren't just standing still. They were observing patterns, tracking movement, watching him. Not like predators. Not like humans. Something in between. "What happens if I stay?" he asked. The older version didn't hesitate this time. "You stop remembering what real was." A pause. "And then, you stop caring." That hit deeper than fear. It felt worse. Why would anyone let that happen? The figure gave a quiet, almost amused breath. Because at first, it feels like power. The space around them shifted slightly, like reacting to the word itself. You can move without rules, see without limits, touch broken timelines, enter fragments that were never meant to be accessed. His curiosity flickered. Then why not fix them? That was the wrong question. The older version's expression changed. Not angry. Not surprised. Just disappointed. That's the first mistake everyone makes. Before he could respond, a sudden distortion tore through the space nearby. One of the floating fragments jerked violently, its edges flickering like corrupted data. Inside it, a woman. Running. Over and over. The same path. Same movement. Same fear. Looping. But something was wrong. She wasn't just repeating. She was slightly changing. Each loop, she looked more aware. More desperate. "She's breaking out," he said instinctively. The older version turned sharply. No. Too late. The fragment cracked open. Not like before. Not clean. This time, it ripped. The woman stumbled forward, out of the fragment, into the unstable space. She collapsed, gasping, her eyes darting wildly. "Help me, please, please," she cried. Her voice was real. Terrified. Human. He moved without thinking. But the older version grabbed his arm instantly. "Don't. She needs help." "No, she's already gone." The woman looked up at him. And for a second, her face shifted. Glitched. Not violently. Subtly. Like two expressions fighting for control. Fear. And something else. Something empty. "Please," she whispered again. Then suddenly, she froze. Her body stiffened. Her eyes locked onto him. And her voice changed. Flat. Distorted. "You shouldn't interfere." He stepped back instinctively. "What?" Her form flickered violently. And then split. Not physically. Visually. Two versions overlapping. One still begging. One completely still. Watching. Then both collapsed into nothing. Erased. Silence. Thick. Heavy. Final. His heart was racing now. That wasn't normal. The older version released his arm slowly. That's what happens when fragments try to become real again. He shook his head. No, that was something else. The older version didn't argue. Because deep down, they both knew. It was something else. "You asked where the others are," the older version said quietly. He nodded. "Now you've seen one." He swallowed. "That wasn't like you." "No," the figure agreed. "Because not everyone becomes stable." A distant sound echoed suddenly. Low. Almost mechanical. But not from any one direction. It came from everywhere. The floating fragments began to shift. Slowly at first. Then faster. Aligning. Like something was pulling them. "What is that?" he asked. The older version's expression hardened. "They noticed you." "Who?" For the first time. The older version hesitated. Not out of fear. But certainty. That's the part you were never supposed to reach. The sound grew louder. Deeper. The watching figures in the distance moved. Not walking. Not running. Just closer. All at once. "You need to understand something," the older version said, stepping in front of him. "There's no system anymore." A pause. "Which means there's nothing stopping what comes next." The space behind them tore open. Not like a fragment. Something bigger. Darker. Controlled. And from within it, a shape began to emerge. Not human. Not broken. Not lost. Intentional. Ancient. Watching. His breath caught. "What is that?" The older version didn't look away. And when it finally spoke, his voice was quiet, but heavy with truth. "That," a pause, "is what built the system in the first place." The shape didn't fully emerge. It didn't need to. Its presence alone bent the space around it, like reality itself was adjusting to make room. The fragments stopped moving. Everything paused. Even the distant figures froze. For the first time. They weren't watching him. They were watching it. His voice barely came out. You said it built the system? The older version stood still, eyes fixed forward. Yes. A long breath. Not alone. That made it worse. How many are there? He asked. The answer came slowly. Enough. The word echoed unnaturally, like the space itself didn't like it. The shape shifted slightly. Not walking. Not moving. Just closer. No transition. No distance. One moment far. The next. Near. His instincts screamed. This wasn't like anything before. Not a fragment. Not a loop. Not a broken escape. This was intent. You weren't supposed to see this layer, the older version continued quietly. None of us were. Then why am I here? He asked. Silence. Then. Because you didn't just break out. A pause. You kept asking questions. That landed hard. The shape pulsed faintly. And suddenly, the space around them changed. Not shattered. Not glitched. Rewritten. The floating fragments flattened into still images. The broken sky turned into something structured. Grid-like. Endless. Cold. Like the skeleton of reality itself had been revealed. What is this? He whispered. The foundation, the older version replied. The part no one is meant to understand. The shape extended something, not a hand, not a limb, but a distortion that reached. The air rippled. And then, a voice. Not heard. Felt. You crossed the boundary. It didn't echo. It embedded. Inside his thoughts. Inside his memory. Inside everything. He staggered slightly. That's not possible. The older version didn't react. It doesn't speak in sound. The voice came again. You are unstable. A pause. Unresolved. His chest tightened. What does that mean? But the answer didn't come from the older version. It came directly from it. You retained awareness beyond intended limits. Images slammed into his mind. Moments from earlier. The AI. The glitch. The question he asked. Can you prove you're real? Everything traced back. Every step. Every break. You initiated divergence. His breathing became uneven. I didn't do anything. The response was immediate. You observed. A pause. That is sufficient. The space flickered again. And suddenly, he saw more. Not fragments. Not loops. But people. Thousands. Millions. All inside structured layers. Living normal lives. Talking. Walking. Believing. Unaware. Those are real worlds, he asked. Contained worlds, the older version corrected. For stability. His mind raced. So none of it is real? The older version turned slightly toward him. It's real enough to keep them inside. That hit harder than anything so far. The voice returned. You were not meant to exit. Another pulse. Stronger. Closer. Return to assigned layer. The command wasn't loud, but it carried weight. Authority. Finality. His jaw tightened. No. The word surprised even him. The space reacted instantly. Distortion surged outward. The shape grew clearer. Not physically, but conceptually. Like his mind was being forced to understand something it shouldn't. You reject correction. A pause. Why? He took a step forward. Heart pounding. Because none of this makes sense. The grid flickered violently. Fragments reappeared for a split second, collapsing, reforming. You built a system to trap people in fake realities? The response came slower this time. Measured. Containment prevents collapse. Collapse of what? He demanded. And for the first time, the older version looked uneasy. The answer came. And it changed everything. Of existence. Silence. Complete. Heavy. He shook his head. That's not possible. The shape pulsed again. You perceive reality as singular. A pause. It is not. The grid expanded. Layer after layer after layer. Infinite structures. Stacked. Interconnected. Fragile. If containment fails, everything around them trembled. All layers converge. His chest tightened. What happens then? No hesitation. No survivors. The words didn't echo. They settled. Final. Absolute. He stepped back slowly, trying to process it. This is insane. The older version spoke again, quieter now. This is why no one is allowed to leave. A distant crack tore through the grid. Not from the architect. From somewhere else. Something breaking. Something spreading. The shape reacted instantly. You are not the only divergence. That froze him. What? Another crack. Louder. Closer. And from somewhere deep within the layers, a surge. Not controlled. Not designed. Chaotic. Alive. The older version's expression changed. Fear. Real fear. That's new. The voice shifted. For the first time. Not fully in control. Containment breach detected. The grid began to collapse in sections. Fragments bursting open. Layers bleeding into each other. Reality. Losing structure. You didn't just break out, the older version said slowly. You started something. The ground beneath them fractured. The distant figures. Now running. Not watching anymore. Escaping. The architect pulsed violently, attempting to stabilize. But something was pushing back. Hard. What did I do? He whispered. The answer came from everywhere. From the collapsing layers. From the braking system. From something else entirely. Something not built. Not controlled. Not contained. You reminded them. The words echoed, not from the architect. From within the collapse. And then, something else began to emerge. Not ancient, not controlled, but free, and very, very aware. The first impact wasn't loud. It wasn't explosive. It was wrong. A distortion rippled across the grid, slow, thick, unnatural, like reality itself had suddenly forgotten how to behave. Then, everything broke at once. Layers that were never meant to touch began to collide. The sky above split into overlapping horizons, daylight bleeding into night, stars visible through blue skies, clouds frozen while storms moved beneath them. Fragments didn't just drift anymore. They slammed into each other, merged, fused incorrectly. A city skyline twisted into a mountain range mid-motion. Streets stretched upward into the air. Buildings folded inward like paper. And inside them, people. Real people. No longer looping. No longer contained. Aware. Screaming. "This isn't supposed to happen," he whispered, stepping back as the space warped violently around him. The older version didn't respond. For the first time, he looked shaken. Not controlled. Not calm. Uncertain. "They're losing control," he said under his breath. "They?" the younger one snapped. "You mean those things?" As if triggered. The architect pulsed again. Stronger this time. The grid tried to stabilize, lines snapping back into place, layers attempting to separate. But something pushed back. Harder. Faster. Every time the system tried to fix itself, more cracks spread. More realities overlapped. "No, no, this is accelerating," the older version said, stepping forward, scanning the shifting layers. "What is?" "The merge rate." Another impact. Closer. A chunk of a city slammed into the space beside them, half a street dangling in midair, cars frozen sideways, gravity pulling in two different directions at once. A man inside the fragment stumbled forward. Then froze mid-step. Then turned. Not confused. Not afraid. Aware. "You see it too, don't you?" he said slowly. His voice echoed unnaturally, like it existed in multiple layers at once. The younger one stared. What's happening to him? The older version didn't answer. Because he already knew. The man smiled. Not with relief. Not with joy. With realization. "It's breaking," he whispered. Then, his body stretched. Not physically. Visually. Like different versions of him were trying to exist in the same place. And then, gone. Collapsed into nothing. The younger one staggered back. "This is wrong. This is all wrong." The architect reacted again. The presence grew heavier, more aggressive. "You have destabilized containment." Its voice no longer felt distant. It was closer now. Focused. On him. "I didn't do this," he shouted. But even as he said it, he knew. Part of this was him. "You initiated divergence," the voice repeated. "And now it spreads." Another crack tore open, larger than before. And from it, something stepped through. Not a fragment. Not a broken human. Something else. A figure, but unstable. Flickering between forms. Different faces. Different ages. Different identities. All overlapping. It looked at him. And smiled. "You feel it too, don't you?" Its voice shifted mid-sentence, multiple tones layered together. We're waking up. The older version stepped forward instantly. No, stay back. But the thing ignored him. It moved closer to the younger one. Not walking. Sliding through space like it didn't follow direction anymore. They told us it was real, it continued. They told us to stay inside. Its face changed again. Now matching his. Perfectly. But you asked the question. The younger one's breath caught. What are you? The thing tilted its head. Something new. Behind them. More cracks. More figures emerging. Some stable. Most not. Reality bending harder with each second. You didn't just break the system, the thing said softly. You broke the illusion that kept it together. The architect surged violently. You are corrupting the layers. For the first time. It sounded strained. Not fully in control. You must be contained. The space around him tightened. Like invisible pressure closing in. The older version turned sharply. You need to decide, right now. Decide what? Stay here, and become part of this chaos. A pause. Or let them reset everything. His chest tightened. Reset? The architect answered. Total layer purge. Everything stopped for a second. Even the chaos seemed to hesitate. What does that mean? He asked slowly. The older version looked straight at him. Grave. Final. It means everyone inside those worlds. A pause. Gets erased. The weight of it hit instantly. Millions. Billions. Gone. Just to fix the system. No, he said quietly. No, you can't do that. The architect didn't hesitate. Containment requires sacrifice. The unstable figure beside him laughed softly. You hear that? It leaned closer. You're not special to them. A pause. You're a problem. The cracks widened. Reality tearing faster now. Layers bleeding into each other uncontrollably. The older version stepped closer. Urgent now. If they reset it, none of this ever happened. And if I don't? He already knew the answer. But he asked anyway. The older version didn't soften it. Then everything collapses. The architect's presence surged one final time. Decision point. Irreversible. Choose. The unstable figures around them began to gather. Watching. Waiting. The worlds behind them. Breaking. Screaming. Fading. And in the middle of it all, he stood. The one who asked the question. The one who broke the system. The one now forced to decide. Who gets to exist? And who doesn't? Everything slowed. Not time. But decision. The chaos around him blurred into something distant, muffled, like reality itself was holding its breath. Choose. The architect's voice didn't echo this time. It waited. The unstable figures stood still. Watching. The older version didn't move either. No guidance. No interference. This was his. His chest rose slowly. Then fell. If I let you reset it, he said, his voice steadier than he expected. Everyone inside those worlds disappears. Yes. No hesitation. No emotion. And if I don't? The answer came from everywhere at once. System-wide collapse. The ground beneath him cracked again, wider this time, revealing layers beneath layers collapsing into each other. Screams echoed faintly through the fractures. Real. Terrifying. Not loops anymore. Not controlled. Ending. He shut his eyes for a second, trying to think. But thinking wasn't helping anymore, because both answers were wrong. You built a system to protect reality, he said slowly, opening his eyes. The architect didn't respond. So why does it feel like all you're doing is deleting it piece by piece? A pause. For the first time. Silence from the architect. The unstable figure beside him smiled. Because they don't protect reality. It leaned closer, voice lowering. They preserve structure. That word hit differently. The older version finally spoke again. Structure is the only thing keeping existence from collapsing. And what about choice? He snapped. No one answered. That was the problem. His fists clenched. So that's it? Either I let you erase everyone. He looked at the breaking worlds. Or I let everything collapse and erase them anyway. The older version's voice was quieter now. There was never a perfect outcome. The unstable figures began to murmur, low-layered voices overlapping. We didn't choose this. They never asked us. We were contained. The sound grew. Not loud, but unified. The architect pulsed sharply. Instability increasing. The pressure in the space intensified. Time was running out. You need to decide now, the older version said firmly. He looked at him. Really looked. You've seen all this before, haven't you? A long pause. Then. A small nod. Yes. That answer hit harder than anything else. And you chose? The older version hesitated. Just for a fraction of a second. I didn't. Everything went still again. What? I couldn't. His chest tightened. So what happened? The older version met his eyes. This. The chaos around them surged violently, as if confirming it. The cracks. The merging. The collapse. This wasn't new. It was repeating. You've been here before, he whispered. And I failed every time. Silence. Heavy. Crushing. So there is no right choice, he said. No, the older version replied. There's only a cost. The architect spoke again. More forceful now. Decision required. The unstable figures stepped closer. Not threatening. Not hostile. Just present. Existing. Waiting. You gave us awareness, one of them said softly. You don't get to take it back. The words cut deep. He looked at them. At the worlds. At the collapsing layers. At the architect. At the older version of himself. The one who had already failed. His breathing slowed. Not from calm. From clarity. Okay, he said quietly. Everyone stilled. Even the collapse seemed to hesitate. I understand now. The architect focused entirely on him. State your decision. He looked straight at it. At the thing that built the system. At the thing that would erase everything to preserve it. And then, he shook his head. No. The word hit like impact. The grid shattered further. Reset denied. The architect's voice sharpened. Then collapse is inevitable. I know. The older version's eyes widened slightly. Not in fear. In realization. You're not choosing chaos, he said slowly. The younger one looked at him. No. A pause. I'm choosing them. The unstable figures froze. The architect surged violently. Unacceptable. The pressure in the space exploded outward. Reality tearing faster now. Uncontrolled. Unrecoverable. You are sacrificing all layers. Yes. No hesitation now. No doubt. But at least it won't be your decision anymore. The words landed. Heavy. Final. For the first time. The architect didn't respond immediately. Because something had changed. Not the system. Not the collapse. Something deeper. Authority. Shifted. The unstable figures began to glow faintly. Not breaking. Not glitching. Becoming. You see it now, one of them whispered. This was never about control. The space around them started to distort differently. Not collapsing. Transforming. The older version stepped back slightly. What are you doing? The younger one didn't look away from the architect. I'm letting it end. A pause. So something else can begin. The architect's form flickered. Unstable for the first time. System integrity failing. The grid dissolved. Completely now. No more structure. No more layers. Just raw existence. Unfiltered. Uncontrolled. The worlds didn't disappear. They changed. Blended. Expanded. Freed. And as everything broke apart, something new started forming within the chaos. Not designed. Not controlled. Alive. The older version watched in silence. Then, slowly, he smiled. Not because it worked. Not because it was safe. But because, for the first time, it was different. The architect's presence faded. Not destroyed. Not defeated. Irrelevant. And as the last pieces of the system dissolved, the younger one stood still, looking out at what came next. Uncertain. Unstable. Real. And finally, free.